What's up, everybody? It's Greg with Delta, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring our own guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of finally being able to record with Mr. Jack Brickhouse. Jack, how you doing?
Greg, I am glorious, sir. I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, this is going to be a great time. This is a divine number. This is number 3 of us trying to record this. So, as I told you on the first one, man, I appreciate you having me on your platform.
Yeah, definitely. So for those of you listening, Jack and I have tried to connect. This is now the third time. We had technical difficulties the first and second.
That's right.
So we had to reschedule. He's been very patient. So just do me a favor and listen to his message because I know it's going to be a great one.
That's right. There's a lot of build-up, so it's going to be great.
There's a lot of build-up. So for those of you that don't know Jack, Jack Brickhouse is a motivated business leader with 17 years of progressive experience in management and operations. Jack has a deep understanding of how to streamline business operations and engage employees in order to reach company objectives and increase profits. Jack has extensive knowledge and experience in performing organizational assessments, business development, and company turnarounds. His professional background spans across transportation, nonprofit, and the entertainment industry. He is an active member of the community, dedicating his time to youth and adult mentoring, along with partnering with various nonprofit organizations throughout the Valley to assist in developing community-related charitable efforts and legislation that positively affects underdeveloped communities. Jack Brickhouse co-authored and released his first book, Cigarettes and Bad Decisions, The Shit I Wish I'd Known, in January 2017. I love it. That's a good title, bro.
You like that title, man?
I do, man. I do.
Everybody always thinks it's about smoking. I have to tell them it's a self-help book, but I get it. You know, that's what we use. That's what we use.
I can tell it's a self-help book, but obviously, like, I like books like that because it's always unique. It's your story, right? It sounds like that's something that's like your story, things that you learned, experiences you had, and then the lessons you took away from it.
Right. That's exactly what it is. And instead of it just being, one-sided, it was myself and my 2 co-authors who each came with our individual perspectives. And then we have 15 chapters. And each chapter, we just kind of gave our individual perspective, on the topic. So we have like one chapter is pursue happiness and then money will come, right? And the message there is, again, find your happiness, find your passion. Don't let money be the motivator. Money is definitely important, but find what you like to do. And one example I utilize is there's a gentleman in London who apparently is into, medieval torches and swords and knives. And he opened up a salon where women pay him a lot of money to do their hair with torches and knives and swords and all these sorts of things. So I use that as an example because if that was your friend, Greg, and he came and said, hey, I'm going to start a salon and charge these women $200 or $300 to come in and do hair, you would have said, man, you're crazy. Nobody's going to let you put a blowtorch on their head or pull out a medieval sword or whatever, right? But this guy's living that. So that's kind of the message of that chapter.
That kind of reminds me that concept that he's doing what he's passionate about, right?
That's right.
I don't know if you've read or started reading yet. It's a new book, Lewis Howes' book, The Greatness Mindset.
I have not.
It's a really good book so far. So I just started reading it, but he talks about some people's meaningful mission.
Okay.
And that you have to find your meaningful mission, something that's important to you and that's going to drive you, right? And you have to do it like because it's something that you're passionate about. And that's that guy's meaningful mission. It's not to make money. It's not even probably to own a salon. It was probably just to do something unique with all these different like medieval tools. He's so passionate about them. And it just transformed into that.
That's it. I agree. I would agree.
Yeah.
And that's how things happen. Yeah. So I use that, because it's an extreme example to, kind of wake people up and understand you can do whatever you want and be lucrative at it, or at least make a living at it. Like you just referenced with this guy.
Yeah, you just got to find what and no one can tell you what your meaningful mission is.
That's right.
So you can't be like, well, what should I do? And I hear that all the time. Well, what I don't know. What are you passionate about? And sometimes it's really hard. I was actually having a leadership call today with we do leadership coaching with myself and with all the top leaders in my organization in Delta Financial. And we were talking about when we go to activate agents and like or we're trying to like get them like really rolling and like tapped in, especially brand new agents coming on board, which is difficult. It's a little bit of a different scenario, especially with a 1099 environment, right? It's not a little bit different than W2. So So we really got to understand who they are and how like what's important to them. And it's like, well, how do you find out what's important to them? Like, how do you find out what they like? And one of the things that I was talking about, I was like, I think it's actually easier to find out what they don't like. I think
Mhm.
it's easier for human beings to be like, nope, I don't do well at this, or nope, I don't like this. And it's almost like a sculpture that you're chipping away all the
Yeah.
things that you don't want, and to paint the picture, the actual sculpture within of what you are and what you want out of life. So finding the things that you don't want, if you don't know what your meaningful mission is, if you don't know what you're passionate about right now, it's probably a lot easier for you to find out what you're not passionate about. It's remove that from your life. Just get it out. And as you remove excess baggage and activities out of your life, even people out of your life, what's
Yes.
going to happen is it's slowly you're going to start to find the things that you are passionate about.
Right. Right. 100%. And as you mentioned, people is very important, because that's one of the when it's time to downsize your life, cutting ties with people is something that an individual can struggle with.
Yeah.
Going back to cigarettes and bad decisions, our opening chapter is crabs in the barrel, right? And it just talks about the syndrome of in certain communities and certain scenarios. I mean, it can even be in corporate world where individuals don't want to see other individuals succeed.
Mhm.
Everybody's clawing for those same few spots, right? And so sometimes you have to sever relationships in order to be able to make progress. So yeah, I agree. And it's usually a short list, like you said. As you talk about the things that you don't like, right? They come to mind really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is like one of my pet peeves is procrastination, right?
Yeah.
So if someone tells me, "Hey, I'm a procrastinator," and I wait and do that, and I guess I say this: procrastination is okay with me if you're one of those people who just let the pressure build up and then deliver quality all the time. Like some people just work that way. But
Yeah.
procrastinating and then coming to me and saying, "Oh, I can't deliver," "Oh, I need more time," or "I need this because you procrastinated," those are that ticks me off. So
Yeah, no,
as you just said,
procrastination
that's
is, and I used to be the same way in college, bro.
yeah,
I would wait to do, so my senior year of college, I was an art major,
okay,
I was a drawing major in college.
right,
And so my junior year, like the second semester of my junior year, I'm halfway through, and I go sit down with my advisor to go
okay,
plan out my senior year classes.
yeah,
And I realized that for my school, all the classes I were doing were studio art classes, so they were like 2 and 3 hours long. So there's
yes,
only so many classes I can do a day.
right, right,
And it wasn't like I had a light class load. Like my typical semester was 16 to 18 credit hours, right?
right,
So like a normal student.
mm-hmm.
So I get to I get to my junior year, end of my junior year, I sit down with an advisor, and it turns out like that school for an art degree, it was a 5-year degree.
Oh
And
wow,
I'm like,
okay,
so now, for context, I was a full ride scholarship, ROTC scholarship cadet. So like when I
okay,
graduate, I
okay,
commission in the military, I go and serve. And so I'm like looking at this, I'm like, well, they're not going to pay for a 5th year school because
mm-hmm.
it's a 4 year, it's a four
Yeah,
year
foreign done,
scholarship.
right.
At the time, I had just gotten married.
Oh, new wife, okay,
I had just got married, and our daughter was set to be born that
oh,
summer.
all right. You got
Yeah.
the full load
And
again.
so I'm like, can I do another year of school without going in
Right,
the military and like starting to make money? Because I'm like,
right,
I'm a student and I'm making like $20,000 a year
okay,
between odd jobs because I'm going to
okay,
school doing like odd jobs. I was like a pizza delivery driver for a while. I worked at
right,
a like that's the random stuff.
yeah, right, right,
And I got a stipend also from school. I got like a $500 tax-free stipend at this time. So every year
okay,
like it would increase. So I just had to I sat there and I was like, well, what do I do? And I went and talked to my RTC instructors and I was like, explain the situation. I said, I don't think I can do another year. Like I'd rather like the degree was not important to me. Serving
right,
was important to me. Get in the
that's
military
right,
because that's what I wanted. That was ultimately the goal. And I was like, I'm not going to be an artist. I'm going to be in the military. Like that's what's more important to me. So they were like, well, do you mind about changing degrees? And I was like, what do you have in mind? They're like, well, the shortest degree is a military history degree, U.S. military history degree.
oh,
And they're like, you already have all your prerequisites. Those are all done. You would just
right,
have to cram military history classes your senior year.
right,
And they had an in with the history department. And so I
right,
ended up switching to a military history degree, but I had to do 21 credit hours of history classes,
Ooh,
2 semesters in a row, Do you know how many papers I had, bro?
Oh, I can only imagine.
It was just straight papers and tests. I was so stressed my senior year, but I got really good at writing. I got really good at writing,
which is important, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For communication, for influence, absolutely.
Yes.
But man, I spent prior. I think my first, like the beginning half of my first semester, I had bad habits of like waiting until the last minute and procrastinating, but then I would get that spark of inspiration, right? And I'd be like, well, it has to happen. And I would just I would cram out a paper, like a 10-page paper within like the last 3 hours before I went to bed. And it would still get like a B+, A-.
Exactly. Right.
And so but I couldn't do that anymore because I had so many papers due. So I was like, I actually got to get serious about this so that I don't flunk. Because if I flunk one class, I'm done. Like it was do or die. So man, it was, and long story short, I'm serious, telling this long story. It was all about learning how to overcome that procrastination. In life. And so I just put myself in a situation where I had to.
Yeah, and that's what it is identifying your weaknesses, as you say, in this case, procrastination, but we all have them in different forms. And instead of shying away and saying, oh, I can't do that, or that's not my forte, is, taking time to go against the grain and build up that muscle. It's just, it's only, you're not good at it because you haven't utilized the muscle and haven't practiced. It's just like with everything else. I tell people that with public speaking all the time, because, people get nervous. Oh, how do you do that? I'm like, well, after a while, it just becomes routine. It's one interview after another one, or you're on a stage or you're on a platform. It's the same thing. Not to say that you don't get, the adrenaline or the butterflies, but as far as nervousness and that kind of goes away. And that's just for me personally, but it comes with repetition and actually just getting out there and doing it. And so just practicing whatever that week. If you feel you're not a great writer, right? That's all you got to do is practice until you get good. I mean, it's that simple.
Absolutely. And I think that those are undervalued skills. Communication, verbal communication, public speaking. You're talking, you're hammering on so much good. This is great. This is great stuff. These are nuggets. But verbal communication and written communication, those two right there are probably two of the most undervalued and underused. However, most required skills for success, because they have to do with being like one, communication, but two, influence.
Yes, most definitely.
And so like just practicing writing a little bit, even if you write in a journal, like handwrite something,
Right. Definitely.
But write daily.
And write daily in any form. Again, we have social media. There's so many different, platforms now that you can practice your writing. Don't always use shortcuts and abbreviations. Sometimes just use that to exercise. I use text messages to do that all the time, to write. But I'm writing emails. I just wrote a government proposal for an international project. So going back to what you just said, Greg, without having that writing ability, that would never happen. That wouldn't even be in my realm.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk about the book a little bit because I'm curious. So I wrote my first book and I finished at the end of last year.
Okay.
And I'm looking at, how did you do your publishing? I'm curious. Did you still publish?
Yeah. So I have a production company. So I just ran it through my production company because I published for some others as well. Okay. So it winded up being self-publishing. But so what I did on the first one was, I had a college friend who had written a book already. And so she came on as the editor/mentor for that Cigarettes and Bad Decisions book. And so she taught me about publishing and formatting and all of those things because, I understand those things need to be done, but I like to know the process, even if I'm not doing it every time, because I may have a different publisher or a different editor and I need to know those things. So now I know how to do those things very proficiently. And just fast forwarding my second book, which was a fiction book, it's a novel. I was able to do all the formatting and all that stuff, and then just kind of leaned on her for the actual publishing part. But there's a couple of different ways you can go. You can go with a big publisher. You go with a bigger publisher. If you can get picked up, you will get the exposure and the marketing. But your pay will be very, very, very tiny unless you sell a lot of books, right? Yeah. Independently, you can still do the same thing because marketing, it is available. Digital marketing and physical marketing. Even billboards are cheap with Blip and all these other advertising revenues. So, the only thing a major deal is really giving you is PR and marketing. So if you can just hire your own PR person and hire you a marketing firm to do your marketing, get on whatever show, you get the same effect. So that's kind of what I do. Again, I just get out and do the lead work only because of who I am and being in the community. So it's not like this for everybody. Everybody has a different angle. But for the first book, that was the angle we took. I do a lot of selling at events, going to book fairs, book shows, all of those things. Those hand to hand, and those work to drive your online sales and your Amazon and Barnes and Nobles or wherever you are.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah, I still haven't pulled the trigger on the publishing. I talked to some people, and I looked at a bigger company that they were going to put me through the widgets, but I had to like pay a little bit on the front end to do the editing because they're going to have it professionally edited beforehand and then send it out and kind of market it. But they liked what I wrote. They were like we think we can get a publisher to pick it up. It still needs to be edited. We recommend this guy. And it was like, I was like, so I'm kind of still, I haven't pulled the trigger.
Well, let's talk about it, man. I can help you there.
Yeah,
you need some assistance on the editing.
We should connect.
Let's connect afterwards. Let's definitely talk about it.
Let's connect.
Okay.
And so talk a little bit about how you got to where you are. How did you had it from when you started in business?
Yeah.
How did you get to here? Right. Yeah. And the journey, the struggles, the mistakes you made.
That's right. All right. And those mistakes continue even to this day, but that's how we learn.
Yeah, that is true.
So rewinding back, my first business I launched when I was 20 years old. It was an aromatherapy business called AeroSense. I'm originally from a little town called Gary, Indiana, just outside of Chicago, Illinois. We're about 30 minutes from downtown. As far as any notoriety, Michael Jackson is from Gary, Indiana, and there's huge steel industry there. Outside of that, it's not really anything that stands out. When I was younger, it was the murder capital of the world for a year or so. So they just kind of sets up what's there. It's just a standard Midwest tough town, just like Pittsburgh or whatever. It's all the same. So I went through the ranks of that. I started with audio visual in high school. I was producing the news shows we had a weekly cable show. So I had a segment that I produced each week for that. And then I was doing DJ work because I was always into the entertainment thing and music. And then as I graduated, I went to Columbia College, Chicago for a year. And I was going for music entrepreneurship. And kind of went through that program, but then I had my son. All right. And I was at that time 18. And so a lot of pressure, all at one time. So I had to put the school thing to the side for a second. But once I did that, that's when I actually opened my first business, AeroSense, which is taking the information I had learned from, reading on my own. And then while I was at Columbia in Chicago, and I found a partner, we got some financing, and we launched a kiosk in the local mall. So that was the first time I had to go get an EIN number and actually, formalize a business. So that was really my first business. And so from there, I did some managing in the entertainment industry. Again, this is all business stuff, helping some artists to, kind of figure out their way. Then went into transportation. So I actually drove semi-truck for a while. I was thinking about actually starting a company, but and this is something we can talk about later, as everybody always has questions about semi-trucks. It's very lucrative, but it's also very expensive to operate trucks, and then trying to find someone to drive them. So I'm like, I don't want to really deal with that. So in between that, again, I still had some other online businesses at the time. I was helping other individuals to set up their businesses. And then I came to Arizona in 2010. In 2013, I went back to school and got my degree, as you were talking about, in the arts. I'm in music, in audio production technology. So I have an associate's degree there. Then I continued through at Arizona State, where I have a master's and a bachelor's in organizational leadership. So in between 2010 and 2023 in Arizona, I launched Brickhouse Productions. That was my production company. So at the time, I took all of my production skills. I do work in the studio. So I compose and arrange music. Now, the last album I put out, it's called Blind Drift. Something Like a Screenplay is actually an album that complements the novel that I put out right now. That's at like 20.5 million on TikTok as far as streams go. And that's not including, Spotify and everything else there. So I definitely do that on the actual live side. I work with a lot of corporations, Fortune 500 companies. I work with the White House several times. I worked with the Super Bowl when they came here to Phoenix as far as production companies go. So at that, it got to a point, it's like, all right, I've worked with the White House, I work with the Super Bowl. What's next, right? I mean, there's everything else is just name dropping. It just goes to Microsoft or whatever. So It's kind of at that point I decided, just kind of reflected back on how far I had come, all the education I received, and I decided to go into the nonprofit space. And so I launched Brickhouse Cares. We're a 501c3 organization back in 2013. And as we were talking about passion in the beginning, my passion is just sharing information with others, right? If anytime I can take, whether it's something simple or break down something complex for someone to understand it, and then they're then able to make progress in their life, that's what drives me. So Brickhouse Cares, that's what we do. Sometimes it's just passing out information and resources. Sometimes it's coaching a small business executive to, to their whatever their objectives are in their business. So we do a variety of consulting. We do mentoring in the schools here. I got to do a lot of work in the classroom with a lot of students. So again, education is important. The earlier we can make contact with the youth, and it helps them to grow and become a lifelong learner. Because that's my main message. Is learning doesn't stop. Sometimes we think after high school or after college or whatever it is, learning stops. But you have to be a lifelong learner, as we were talking about, developing writing skills, developing whatever your weaknesses are. So through Brickhouse Cares, again, I've got to do some traveling. I've done some study abroads, one in Dominican Republic, where we were learning about leadership there. Well, I was there learning about leadership when I was with Arizona State. We got to do some philanthropy work, handing out medication, building houses, teaching English in the schools, those things. I did another one in Belize. Again, got to go with the Maya people, who a lot of the world think is extinct, right? Well, the Maya people are extinct. They're not extinct. I went to their house a few years back. They're still around. All right. And so I got to learn, about their community and how their leadership and how they do things. So, I'll just take all this information from a global standpoint, because we're in a global economy now, and work across the pond. And the last thing I'll add, and then I'll pass it back to you. So at the end of the year, last year, I was able to trace my ancestral lineage back to Sierra Leone in Africa. So the current president has the borders open to African Americans who want to come back and receive their citizenship, if you can prove it through your lineage. And I did. So I now have dual citizenship here in the States and in Sierra Leone. So I'm going to be doing some projects back home. Already have some community partners in Sierra Leone and Ghana and India, all these other great places. So
that's amazing.
That's all the work, man. I stay in the community.
That's amazing that you're giving back in that capacity, and you're helping the community, especially the younger community. And I do believe, my opinion, I think, just based on the state of where education is today, that we need to put a better focus on education. That's and right. Really prepare that next generation to be stronger and to be more resilient, be more resourceful, and actually embrace what hard work actually means in order to build back to a greater country. Because people nowadays are like, oh, I'm a hard worker. And the second they hit a road bump, they're like, this is too hard.
They quit, right? Yeah. Commitment. Listen, it took us 3 times to get this interview off, right? We committed to this over the past month and a half. So
exactly.
As we talk about journeys, right? My journey, how I got here, is just commitment. Because again, there's a lot of hurdles. As I said, I had a child early on, then had my daughter a few years later. The markets are up. There's 9/11. There's the recession that we had. There's always things that are going to challenge the individual as a leader or a group, right? Whatever it may be. So just having commitment and being, as Bruce Lee said, just be like water. Whatever container you're in at the time, just flow with it, right? Because it's only temporary, and then you'll be in the next container.
Exactly. It's only temporary.
That's right.
The only constant is change.
The only constant is change. Absolutely.
Like you're like, good times. Don't revel in the good times.
Right.
Storms coming. I mean, enjoy it,
right.
But understand that it's not going to be that way forever. Storms are coming.
Right.
And the point is, like, hey, when the storm comes, get used to dancing in the rain, bro.
That's right.
Get used to operating in the storm, and don't just hunker down and try to conserve, because there's people that are out there working twice as hard in the storm, and they are taking your market share.
Yes, yeah, and that's what I used to say when the pandemic hit. It was myself and a couple of business partners. We were in the tower downtown, and everything just dried up here in Phoenix, and so there was very few people out. And so I would always tease them when we come in the office. I would say, hey, it's only the wolves out here now, the super hungry. Those are the only people we're going to meet. And that's it. Those are the people, like you said, the people that were still working. So a lot of the fat was trimmed off for those who were still able to come out and conduct business. So I know we got to meet a lot of great people during that time. So
and the good thing is that there's just as much to eat.
Oh, it's just as much.
It's just as much as as
yeah.
abundant as you just don't know it. You don't realize.
You just don't know it. That's right.
And there's
100%.
less people hunting for it, and so you're just like, hey man.
Yeah, let me get it. Let me get it. That's right.
So the wolves that are out there eating, they end up like making their own like alpha wolf pack.
Yeah, that's it. That's all that happens. That's all get together.
They kind of work together.
That's right. And so when everything returns, now it's a new wolf pack, right? Is running the show. That's how it goes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And just to, I mean, I'm not going to talk. I don't want to get too much into the current landscape of like the social, economic, and political landscape. However, I think a major storm is on the horizon, like probably the biggest storm that we've ever seen in the history of the United States. Is brewing right now, and the signs are all there with the housing market, with the inflation, with taxes, with everything. It like the signs are there, and it's about to burst. And so I think that people are going to realize just what that looks like. And we've had great times. We've had some really prosperous times especially since the .com burst and since the housing bubble burst.
Yes.
We've had a lot of growth and a lot of success and prosperity. And those times have made weak people, have made lazy, weak, and people that feel entitled.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of entitlement. Yeah.
A lot of entitlement. And so we're going to see there's about to have some challenging times, and we're going to have to create some really tough individuals.
Yes. Yeah. So I just know here in this Phoenix market, when there was a shortage, as they told everyone here, the prices were ridiculous. I had a buddy who was an agent here, and a house that he sold was then sold 2 more times after him, with no improvements, but the price went up about $75,000 on one. One went up $200,000. People were then signing just to sign because they were scared. Oh, I need to get an offer in. They were signing and waiving all inspections, everything. And then when you get in the house, you realize you just overpaid $50K, $75K, and now you still have to come up for maintenance, right? Because now this water heater has busted through your wall because you didn't do the inspection, or you didn't know that the ceiling needed to be redone on the roof or whatever. And so a lot of that went on now. And so now the market here is receding. So as you just said, here we go. Let's see what happens.
We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting. What are some of the challenges that you had whenever you were starting your business, especially like when what was that like the first time you were like, man, I got to apply for my EIN and I'm actually like owning a business now. Rewind back to that time, like how challenging that was, like doing all that and like taking on this new venture. Like, were you nervous? Were you like, dude, I don't know what to do?
I was. Oh, of course, there's always nerves. I was a kid. I think we started paperwork at 19. I may have been 20 at the time, but it was sometime in that range. I was not necessarily afraid of paperwork. I mean, when I took government and econ in high school, I loved it. All right, so I understood. Not to say that I was a master at that point. I just wasn't scared. I just understood that there's processes. All of these documents have instructions. All you got to do is read the instructions. And if you get something wrong, they'll help you to fix it so that you get it right. I mean, it's very simple. So, but again, going into it, I'm like, all right, I got to go through this and I need to go on the IRS site to figure out how to do this. So I went through that. We had to sign it. So I will say this: before the lease and before we actually opened the retail space, we actually proved the concept first. So way before any of that even came to mind, I had a cousin who actually had come back. He was in college in South Texas. I think he was in Houston, and he had come back with these products. He's, I have these oils and these lotions and these fragrances, and I can show you, how to do this, and we can go out and sell these in the community and generate some revenue, maybe able to turn into a business. I'm like, all right, cool, man. Let's go out and give it a shot. So we did. So we went out for about 6 months, right? Just going out every other day or so, going into the local barbershops, going to the beaches and all of these communities. On the border of Indiana and on the south and west side of Chicago, until everything really, started to catch on. And we were able to generate enough revenue through sales of the product to actually go into setting up the actual retail spot. So we didn't go and take a loan. And as I build businesses and when I work with clients to build their business, that's the approach. Sometimes financing is needed, but if not, let's prove this concept. Right. Let's prove this concept, right? And if this works, this is going to fund everything that you need. And so that's what happened. We went out. We were able to start making, money each and every day. So we started putting that aside. I got to that point. I said, all right, well, let's try to find some, some retail space. So we went and did that. We then had, one partner that I had, his mom wanted to be a part of it, so she actually put in. So that was some funding that we had, towards the opening. So that was the first business. So we were located in the mall there locally. What we did incorrectly was hand off the operations too quickly. Instead of us being there, because we were just switching off. I'll come in for 12 hours, my partner would come in for 12, or if we had 3 partners that can work that day, or we would do 8s, whatever it was. Or I should say condensed that it was only open 12 hours, but we were splitting up the time. But then we hired people too quickly, right? So we just start hiring salespeople to be there, and then we kind of pulled away from being in the core of the operation. And then that's when things just kind of took a slide, maybe a couple of years in. All right, so that was one of the first lessons that I had, because I was 19, 20. I'm a business owner. It's time to kick my feet up, right? And we have the product, and I have the store, and we have the name, and all those things. So that was the first tough lesson that I had. But fortunately, there was not a lot to lose there. Like, it's not like I had a company where we had 20 people and a bunch of people. At that time, the people that were working for me were our high school friends, right? So they were just looking for part-time jobs. They were happy to be at the mall every day, So, but it was a great opportunity to get some experience. Yeah. And I mean, that's what I've done my whole career. Like, before I go and do something, I do it for free first to go learn. When I got into music, I used to produce a conservative talk radio show. So in the beginning, I went there and I said, hey, I'll do this for free. You just tell me what you know. I have all these skills. You have these needs, right? And then again, that turned into a paying role. Even with a lot of business work that I did. Before I got paid for doing this stuff, I had to go and coach some people and coach some executives, for very little to nothing. You have to prove yourself first. Yep. And so, a lot of individuals are always looking for, especially if they're trying to leave a corporate job or a 9-to-5 and go into entrepreneurship, this perfect balance of, I need to make exactly what I'm making now to do this, and I need this much time. And I'm like, you may not be ready if you're coming in with all of these parameters, because, once you jump into this entrepreneurship thing, I mean, everything is you're in control of everything. So, and I also relate that to, think about this. People think the CEO of a company just kicks their feet back and flies around the country. But when BP oil company spills oil in the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, whichever ocean, the Gulf, wherever it was, who's the first person's phone is going to ring, no matter where he is in the world? The CEO or her phone is going to ring. Hey, we have a crisis. So it doesn't matter if we're in the south of France. I got to get on a flight and get back to the States now, because that's his baby. And so, just learning to take the ownership and understanding that no matter how big your company gets, you still have to be a part of it if you want it to operate, successfully.
Absolutely. And I agree 100% about doing it for free for first. I launched my coaching program, and by the time this airs, my coaching program will have been launched for about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And but I've been coaching agents for years. I've been coaching. Right. I was coaching soldiers in the military on physical fitness and helping them change their body and change their mindset. And then I got a passion for it, and I loved seeing the change that people had in their life. Right.
Yes.
When they started to have better habits, and then I went through some really challenging stuff, and I was able to get through it myself, and I ended up making some massive changes in all areas of my life, and people noticed. And so I would have people reaching out to me and be like, "How'd you do it?" And I was like, "Well, I did this, that, the other, and this is what my challenge was." And I was just very vulnerable and transparent. Like, I had no shame, no guilt. Right. I'd let it all go. And when I told them that, they're like, "Oh my God, that's just like me. Like, I have this addiction or that addiction." They're telling me. And so I would start helping and coaching them and how to get through and help make their life better. And I just did it because I wanted to do it. I just did it because I enjoyed it. And I had a passion for helping people. And I did that for so long. And I was really just focused more on insurance agents, because that was kind of my niche, being in insurance. And eventually I was like, you know what? There's millions, probably billions of people that are that are affected by their vices, by the demons that control them. you know, in their mind and in their life, like living literally in hell on earth on their mind, and they don't realize that they have the key to the cell that they're staying inside in their pocket.
That's right.
In their pocket, right? And so, so I was like, you know, I want to do this. I want to reach more people, and so I started my coaching program, and it's been great so far. Like just being able to help and coach people, and so you're absolutely right. If you want to do something, you find that meaningful mission. You know what you do. You start doing it first. Do it for free.
You just start doing it. That's it.
And in fact, this is actually talked about in Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yes.
Yeah, he talks about it like when he was a kid. When one of the first lessons they taught him was to work for free.
Yes.
And then your mind will find ways to make money. We'll find ways to we'll like solve this problem, but do the work for free, and then you'll start to get you'll create skills.
Right, because what I'll say is, you know, sometimes I'll be talking with an individual and they want to get into something, and my advice is to just jump into it, because until you get into an industry or you know, with retail, whatever it is you're trying to do, there's some things that are available to you that you don't know, because you don't know the lingo, because you're not there, you're not in the environment. So just going out into the environment, like you said, once you learn enough about what's actually going on, then you can piece together things. Oh, I have this skill. This skill complements this part of the industry, or it complements this part of the industry, or maybe I can do both, right? But without being there and taking the time to dive into it and see what's actually happening, right, you wouldn't know that. My advice is always to go out and network, right? People always ask, well, how do I get connected? Because you just go out. There's free events everywhere, especially if you're in a city area, right? You find out if you're into building and you're an architect or construction. There's builders associations. Just go online and find them. They have meetings all the time. If you go there, you don't have to guess who's who. Everybody's there. It's somebody in your industry, right? It may be the CEO of the company. It may just be a peer of yours that can help you. So just going out, and getting connected and jumping into it. You're going to spend some free hours. I mean, that's just what it is. Or you're not going to get paid. And even when you're getting paid for everything, sometimes you'll do some stuff that you're still not getting paid for, right? Because it just takes that to get the job done. So as you said, you will find ways to make money, but you have to jump out and get 10 toes down, so you can actually understand what's going on and what you need to accomplish.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this has been a great conversation, because we're just like kind of shooting the shit and talking about all kinds of, but you're dropping a lot of nuggets. And so for those of you listening, go back and listen to a lot of things that Jack's talking about, because he's talking about some of these are like kind of the basic soft skills that people just don't think about when it comes to being an entrepreneur, bootstrapping, chasing after your meaningful mission, your dream, what you want to do, and getting to work as an entrepreneur. But if anyone's listening to this and they're like, man, I like everything he's saying, I want to connect more with him. And, I hear that he has this Brickhouse Cares, his nonprofit. I wonder if I could, reach out to him through that, or like, what's that program entail when it comes to like how you can help business owners or young entrepreneurs, etc.
Yes, I mean, it's all custom. I take on, it's kind of a project by project basis. I never, want to extend myself or the team. But it's just a matter of let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Let me see. Am I the person to help you first? Right. I don't want to waste my time or your time. Maybe I need to refer them to Greg. Right. Maybe he has more of the answers. And so that's what I'm about. Let's just have a conversation. Shoot me an email. You can reach out brickhouse.cares@gmail.com. And again, whatever your question is, if you're a current entrepreneur and you need sustainability, or you need to think about how to revamp your business, I can talk to you about that. If you just need motivation, I can talk to you about that. What it comes down to is usually it's just accountability. And what I do is, let's just say, Greg, I took you on as a client. You already know we would do an assessment. Then I would sit down with you and we would figure out some type of strategic plan on, all right, these are the things you want to do. Well, here's the strategy on how we're going to get there over the next 90 days or 120 days, or whatever we're talking. Yeah. And then after that, and we agree upon all those things, then I will put a project plan in place. All right. So now, week by week, day by day, we know what we need to accomplish. So by the end of the week, the individual, or in this case, Greg, you would know either I'm ahead of my deadline or I'm behind. So now we can figure out how to adjust and go forward. And so, it's nothing more than, organizing thoughts and just figuring out what's really needed. And the other thing is, a lot of times dealing with entrepreneurs, it's not just business, it's personal. And I'm sure you can vouch for that as well. You have to talk about some personal things, because home life affects business life, right? The things that are going on. Like you said, I have my wife and then I have my kid all at the same. All these things are going on. So sometimes we have to talk about strategies to solve problems at home in order to even be able to talk about strategies in the office, or becoming a new entrepreneur. A lot of new or younger entrepreneurs who are used to having a regular job, or used to getting paid, every week or every 2 weeks or whatever it is. Well, if you're going head first, which it depends on the situation. A lot of times I tell them just to, take your time and build up the entrepreneurship or the business that you're looking to start before you jump, feet first into it. But just figuring out where you are, what kind of leader you are. All right, do you have do you have the stomach for this? As I like to be very frank, because this is what it's really like. Right. Although you submit invoices and you're owed this amount of money, you may or may not get paid within your invoice time. Right. So now what are you going to do? Because the bills, if you don't have revenue, and these are the tough decisions that leaders stay up at night thinking about, especially small business owners. So these are the things I would talk to you about if you were coming in as a new entrepreneur, seasoned entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And the last question I ask all my guests, that come on the show. You have the opportunity to sit with, learn from, have a conversation with, break bread with 3 individuals, anyone in history, alive or deceased. Who would those 3 be and why?
Yeah, I'm going to stay in the spiritual realm. So I'm going to go Buddha, I'm going Muhammad, and I'm going Jesus. Right. So we're going to sit down and we're going to break bread, and I want to talk about all these things. And I say that because I'm Amnius. So I read the Bhagavad Gita, I read the Quran, I read the Bible, I read all of that. Because if I only speak one language, how can I go and heal and love, which is what all the texts talk about? If I can't talk to my brothers that talk about Gandhi, or talk about Buddha, or talk about Muhammad. So I speak all of those different languages, and I would just sit down and just talk about what are the struggles that you are experiencing. If you know that you are, the leader at this time, if this person has been elevated at the time. Depends on what time I'm meeting them. Am I meeting them early on in life to talk with them? Have they accomplished everything already? How do you deal with the struggles and inspiration, right? That's the other thing we have to talk about as a leader. It's not easy to be fired up and motivated enough every day to fire up and motivate everybody else. Yeah. Right. So if you're a Jesus or Muhammad or you're Buddha, whoever you are, how do you do that? Right. Mother Teresa, how do you do that?
That's actually a pretty interesting concept. I never thought about like that. Like, I'd speak to Buddha, but I want to speak to Buddha before he's Buddha.
Right. See, that's what I'm saying. Right.
What's his mind like at that point?
Right. So these are great questions, but that's how we'll run that.
Or maybe when he gets the spark of inspiration of what he wants to do, and that moment when he knows he's meant for something more, that. I want to talk to him at that moment.
Right at that moment. Right then.
Yeah. Right. That's amazing. That's amazing. I love all 3 of those. Thank you so much for sharing that and for coming on the podcast. Yes. This has been an amazing conversation. Yes. And for those of you that like this, leave a comment if you want to see Jack again on the I feel like there's so much more. There was layers of depth that we could still go into. Yes, we're just scratching the surface. 100%. If you watch this till now, that means you got value. And if you got value, do us a favor. We're going to ask you a little bit of a favor. Share this content with somebody else that can also learn and grow from it, that can also get value from it. We grow by word of mouth, and that means by you. Okay. And it means the world to both Jack and I that you share this content, because it gets to spread both of our messages. It takes you 60 seconds to rate, review, subscribe, or share. So this has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you.